Journalists who work in war zones are members of a band of brothers. Here at CBS News, we still mourn the deaths of cameraman Paul Douglas and soundman James Brolin in Iraq back in 2006. Senior contributor Ted Koppel takes a look now at photojournalists present and future.
In its own way, the South Bronx itself was a war zone back in the 1980s.
You couldn't give property away back then.
No. I got here in '86, and it was awful. Shootings every day, just really bad violence.
Mike Kamber took all the money he'd saved shooting photographs for the New York Times in actual war zones and bought this building in the South Bronx in 2010.
I knew there was a need. I felt like we could make a difference.
Mike and another photographer, Tim Hetherington, with Magnum Photos, had this dream, a place where disadvantaged kids could learn about photojournalism.
Because it's not going to give you the stability you need. We've got about 60 students, and they're all from immigrant families. Also a lot of West African families now. Mali, Ivory Coast, Burkina Faso.
Mike's friend Tim had spent years in West Africa, did some of his most creative work there.
He was in the midst of war, went on combat missions every day. He would do these incredible close-ups, he would do these beautiful landscapes, photograph graffiti.
For more than a month, the Bronx Documentary Center has put on a special exhibit featuring Tim Hetherington's work in Liberia, alongside that of another veteran photographer, Chris Hondros, who worked for Getty Images.
Chris was looking for the action, looking for really kind of visceral, powerful photos that would end up on the front pages of newspapers. He was looking for impact.
In 2011, they were both killed while on assignment in Libya.
The problem with war photography is that there's absolutely no way to do it from a distance.
That was Chris just months before his death. There's something of a breed unto themselves, these combat photographers.
You have to be close. You can't do it from your hotel, you can't do it from across the street, across the bridge. You have to be there.
Often what's there is chaos, absolute bedlam, as in this moment when Chris took a phone call in the middle of an intense firefight in Liberia.
Hello, it's Chris.
This scene is from the documentary Hondros.
Hey, okay. Things are fine. Give me a call back in about half an hour.
The minute I heard that, I knew that we were going to open the film with that. That was him in a nutshell. He was cool and collected under fire.
Greg Campbell and Chris knew one another since high school. Greg directed the documentary Hondros as a tribute to his friend. It's not an act, it's a state of mind. This ability to find and capture a moment of absolute clarity in the midst of total madness.
It's the photo that kind of put Chris on the map. It's a picture of Joseph after firing a rocket-propelled grenade on a contested bridge in Monrovia.
The photograph ended up on front pages all around the world. Here's the part, though, that got no attention. After the war in Liberia ended, Chris Hondros found that young fighter. Joseph Duo was his name.
At that point, I was just a 10th grade student.
When Chris learned that Joseph wanted to go to school, he paid for his education.
By the power of God and Him, my life turned around, and I was able to reintegrate myself back in society.
Tim Hetherington forged similar close ties to the people he photographed.
I think the important thing for me is to connect with real people, to document them in these extreme circumstances.
Essentially low-key, Tim still drew attention.
He was a tall, handsome Brit, right? So people just noticed him.
Sebastian Junger, himself a photographer, documentary maker, and author, recalls the first time he and Tim met at an airport.
I looked up because I felt everyone at the gate looking up, and they were all looking up because Tim was walking in.
Sebastian and Tim would spend the better part of a year in and out of Afghanistan, embedded with U.S. troops at a remote outpost. The documentary the two men produced, Restrepo, went on to be nominated for an Academy Award. This is Tim.
I think we were their targets. It just was right, very close over our head incoming.
If you have a video camera and there's combat, it's very obvious what to shoot. But when there's nothing going on, when it's a hot day, everyone was knocked out with the heat. And Tim was creeping around taking everyone's photographs as they slept. And I was like, Tim, man, what are you doing? And he said, oh, you don't get it. They don't have their gear on. They look like little boys. What I'm photographing is what their mothers see when they think of their sons.
April 20th, 2011. Chris Hondros and Tim Hetherington were in Misrata, Libya, in the middle of yet another war. You can't see Tim, he's shooting the video and it's hard to make out the sound, but Tim says,
Which way is the front line from here?
Which way is the front line from here? And that became the title of Sebastian Junger's next documentary. He had planned to be along on that assignment.
At the last minute, I couldn't go. Tim went on his own and was hit with a fragment from an 81mm mortar, the same mortar that killed Chris Hondros.
Their friends found a variety of ways to remember.
Show me the tat.
Sure. So this is Chris's initials.
You want to hold it up? When did you do that?
I don't remember precisely, but it was in the weeks, I'm sure, after he was killed. That whole period is a real kind of blur in my memory.
Sebastian Junger was haunted by the knowledge that his friend Tim could have been saved.
So I started a program called RISC, R-I-S-C, Reporters Instructed in Saving Colleagues. Its purpose is to train experienced freelance war reporters in life-saving first aid techniques so that other journalists confronted with a situation like Tim's might know what to do.
Several hundred freelance reporters, says Junger, have taken the program, which is free. So too are the photography classes offered at the Bronx Documentary Center.
How are we going to compensate with our cameras? We're shooting in very low light.
Founder Mike Kamber knows what he's teaching.
Yeah, now it's sort of mysterious and emotional. Journalism is not opinions. Journalism is facts and evidence. We teach them that this was Tim's method, and that's made a huge impression on them. Going to be tricky, but I have faith in you. You can do this.
That's also what filmmaker Greg Campbell believes.
One of the things I've learned about the photojournalism community is that they're incredibly self-policing. They value the truth and the honesty that a news photograph can and should deliver.
You never fake a photograph. If we ever saw a photographer altering a scene in any way, they would never work again. That was really the code, was that it had to be done with complete integrity.
And yet we live in an age of Photoshop. We live in an age where altering photographs, every 12-year-old kid can do that.
No real documentary photographer alters a photograph. It's completely against our ethics. It's against the very reason that we're out there on the front lines risking our lives. We've got to tell the story correctly.
That exhibit of Tim and Chris's photographs from Liberia opened to a packed house, friends, members of the Bronx community, and the United Nations Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed.
We are here to celebrate the work of two of the finest human beings, the bravest photojournalists of our time.
Chris is dead, Tim is dead. My friend Martin Adler is dead. Joao Silva lost both of his legs. Giles Dooley, my friend, lost both legs and an arm in Afghanistan. These men and women went out and put their lives out there every day because it made a difference.
And that, Mike believes, is a legacy worth passing on.
Remember, you're putting a box around the world. You got to think about where the box is going to go, what you're going to put in, what you're going to put out. Oh man, that's beautiful. Did you see this? That's great. Nice work. I'm impressed.